welcome to another episode of the Speakeasy podcast. My name is Kate, otherwise known as Narataki.
And I'm Alan, otherwise known as Hisui.
We are from reversethieves.com, and you can go there to get other episodes of the Speakeasy podcast, as well as many other podcasts, and 3+ blog posts every week.
And if you wish to contact us, to send us feedback about how wonderful our podcast is, or have questions for our interrogation room, then you can email us at reversethieves@gmail.com, or you can just always send us a message on Twitter. I am HisuiRT.
And I'm NarutakiRT.
And we are usually talking on there. We might not get back to you immediately, but we always will read your response no matter how you contact us.
And we are also on YouTube. So if you're looking for little bonuses that Al does every week, you can find them on there.
And otherwise, let us begin.
So this time we are talking about Free Comic Book Day, which is always the first Saturday of May. And we've been participating for, at least a couple of years, really making a day out of it.
I know we've done it like an official go-to day at least 3 years. And I think we've all gone previous years, but not so formally.
And I really feel like it has changed over the last few years as far as what publishers are doing for it and what they're offering, because I feel as though when I first started going to Free Comic Book Day in an infrequent manner, the comics weren't really that great. It was always like, they were free, which was good, but the actual content was just kind of, I don't feel like I really remember it as being all that great. Whereas in the last few years, I've seen publishers and fans give it more attention, and in that way it seems like they're really constructing stuff just for Free Comic Book Day, trying to come up with fun stories or ideas that are, just for this day. And I think that has really just made a difference, and now it seems like a big event for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And I think, thankfully, of course, Marvel and DC always make a big showing, usually now, especially that the comic book movie is so ascendant. They're usually pimping whatever, I know Marvel is always usually pimping whatever one of the big superhero movies of the summer is going to be. I did also notice, I think they've also made an effort, I don't know when this started, but I've noticed a lot more effort to have like kid-friendly ones.
That's always been the goal. In fact, it only started a couple of years ago where people started releasing adult, only titles for Free Comic Book Day. Because it was a big deal when there was, a Walking Dead Free Comic Book Day. That might have been last year or the year before that, but it was a big deal that was done. So I don't know if I'm sure, somebody else might know, but I don't know if there was any, explicit ban on doing that, but usually it was, all ages stuff. But I have to say that even with that, I don't think that that's a bad or good thing. I don't really care. But as far as the offerings, I feel like the all ages stuff is still usually the strongest. So, I don't know what that means, but I guess I'm glad that that's still the strongest stuff, because I think that's one of the bigger markets for this kind of celebration, and I'm glad that they're not losing that. I think it always comes up whether or not Free Comic Book Day is doing anything. Is it getting people to read comics who don't normally read comics? Is it really just for people who already read comics? Who's it for? What's the point? That sort of thing. Because, it costs publishers money to make this stuff, and it also costs the stores.
Yeah, they have to buy all the stuff. That's why sometimes you'll see certain stores don't carry certain stuff, because they usually come in packs, as I understand, and there's usually 2 or 3 packs, and so smaller stores will just buy I know the people who go into the store, they're gonna buy pack 1, let's call them pack 1 and 2, but not enough people are gonna buy pack 3 to be worth my while, so I'm not gonna order any pack 3.
Yeah, and I didn't know that for a long time. I just kind of assumed it was all free. So these local stores, because I think one of the other things that Free Comic Book Day does that I always try to say and mention is that, I mean, yes, it's about free comics, it's about getting comics, about getting people to read comics, but it's also about supporting your local comic book store, because obviously comic book stores are all local comic book stores, you know, like there's not really like the franchise comic book store, don't go there. You know, they're all small businesses, so that's also a part of it. Here in New York City, there are a lot of comic book stores. We're lucky in that, and there's a few in Brooklyn also, which we didn't, get to. I think it's interesting because I wonder if in other parts of the country where there is more than one comic book store, in a decent sized city, how many free comics people get, because in New York you might think, oh, well, there's so many free comic books and so many comic book stores, you must get like tons. But the thing is that it's such a well-known event now, and everybody shows up really early. You really have to pick your kind of one, maybe two stores, and we have to like strategize. Okay, what's everybody getting? Because we're not allowed to get doubles of anything. That way we can read as many as possible. So that's why you go with a group. That way everybody can share. So, we did end up with like 25 free comics. But there was like 60 free comics or something insane for the day. So
yeah, unfortunately we didn't get the sexy zombie girl.
Oh man, we were looking for it and everything. Actually, there is one. There were a few that I wanted that, I didn't see or, just wasn't able to get, so...
So now nobody can dethrone, what do you call it? The prostitute house wars.
Whatever that was was that last year?
Yeah.
I can't even remember. We've read some real great stuff from Free Comic Book Day, guys. See how that ban on adult-only stuff has really helped us? No. In New York, yeah, like, the stores open ridiculously early. It is so not helpful because Midtown Comics opens at 8 a.m. That's normal for them. I'm not, like, holding it against them. That's just how they do. They're the big store here in the city, and there's 3 of them. But I don't even go there because for Free Comic Book Day, to me, is about the quest. And if you go to Midtown Comics and you actually get there early, you pretty much get, like, 90% of the comics. That's not fun. I don't know. I don't know why I, actually like to make more trouble for myself, but I do.
We could have gone to? We could have went to the one by where I used to work, by the South Street Seaport, because I think that's, like, the smallest.
And it opens later.
Mm-hmm. I didn't even think about it.
I actually thought about it.
Oh, okay.
But I was like, I don't want to go all the way down there. So, because we ended up going to... So, we skipped Midtown. I personally am just not really a big fan of them. Not that they're bad people or anything, but they're the biggest, and they don't really need my support. They're doing fine. And everybody goes there. And also, they're so big that they're one of the few stores that doesn't even have... Because, like, one of the other things that the stores around here usually do is that there's, like, a sale on Free Comic Book Day. So it's like an extra incentive to go get your free comics and also buy something, which, again, if you can do it, it's good to do that on that day for them, because as we mentioned, these comics aren't actually free. Yeah, Midtown doesn't even have a sale. They're like, nah, we don't need to. So I feel like, Also, I do not want to wake up that early on Free Comic Book Day. Then it just feels like work. We stopped at JHU. I feel like that's what's officially called now, because when you look up Jim Hanley's, like, it doesn't come up properly. So that's what it's called now. And that I really like that store, and I really like their free comic book offerings, because you get to go in and then you have the big wall of free comic books and get to point out which of the, 4 this year?
Yeah.
That you wanted and everything. Although it's kind of torturous because it's a very long line and you can see the comics, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna get that one. And then when you get up, like, as you get closer, you see them disappearing off the shelf. No! Like, I need that one! So it's a little bit torturous. And then we also hit Carmine Street Comics, which is probably the smallest store in the city. It's a very, very tiny, very narrow little store, but they actually had a lot of comics.
I only took 1 or 2 from there because I really Like, they let you take as much as you wanted, but I was like, man, like, there are a lot of these titles that only have, like, 1 or 2 left, so I'm like, I'm gonna leave them for other people.
Who really want them, hopefully. Hopefully they really wanted them. They also were supposed to open 11, and they were already open when we got there. I was mad, because I was like, oh, I'll get... They open later, so I'll get there and, get there at exactly the right time and then not miss anything, but whatever. And then we had kind of planned to hit Forbidden Planet. And it's so funny because Forbidden Planet is a store I really like. But every time I go there for Free Comic Book Day, I think, why did I come here? Because I guess it's the most well-known downtown store. So I'm sure they have a crazy line in the morning. And then when you get there, it's sort of the same deal as at Midtown, which is like, here's what we have left, here's like a random comic, which is not bad. I mean, it's all free. Again, I'm not really complaining, but I'm mostly saying that you might imagine that it's New York City, so you can like go to all these stores and get all your free comics, but really you're still picking like what your priority places are. Part of me is just really sad that we didn't get those homemade Twinkies and Oreos like we did last year, because that place closed down. The people who work there own Carmine Street. The guy who owned that store doesn't own Carmine Street. He like retired, I guess you could say. But some of the people who work there, that they own the little store downtown. Yeah, no free snacks this year, which was a surprise. Which saddened me. Yeah, man, I would totally go for snacks over like signings and stuff, which is terrible. We're pretty able to feed ourselves, like, but we can't exactly get artists and writers in, so maybe we should change our priorities. No, not gonna happen. But all the stores, or most of the stores, had signings over the course of the day. The ones that stood out to me, I mean, you can definitely look it up. There was like a ton of people everywhere, because a lot of people live in the New York City area, so they don't have any problem showing up at Jim Hanley's at JHU. When we got there, Brandon Montclair and Amy Reeder were setting up they're the creators of Rocket Girl, which is really good, and you should all be reading it anyway. No Rocket Girl free comic book offering, though, or anything like that. Down at Carmine Street, they had signings all day and through to the night, and then they had an event in the evening, so they really did it up big, more than a lot of other people. Forbidden Planet had a couple of signings, but the best signing was at Carmine Street, because they had the creator of A Piggy's Tale, Todd Imco, and he lives like right in the area. If you guys haven't heard of this comic, it's just this short comic. It was funded on Kickstarter, and it's about a 3-legged superhero dog and a superhero cat who team up. And it's based on a real dog who has 3 legs that the guy rescued. Actually, if you read about how they found the dog, because they were doing veterinary work in South America, and they're like, I guess there's like rogue mercenary veterinarians wandering the world, which I didn't know about, but sounds pretty badass, right? The blackjacks of vets. Yes, I would read a comic about that for sure. But they found this dog who was starved and injured, leg injured, and like it was like all his hair had fallen out and everything. But they nursed him back to health, and they amputated the leg, and now he's doing great. And so this comic is, kind of about them raising people's spirits. It's a sweet little all ages comic. So yeah, fine. Todd Imco, the creator, nice guy, was there. But the dog was there! That was the important part! We met a superhero dog and this very sweet dog named Piggy. That was totally the best part of the day. Also, the comic, for those of you who are going out to buy it immediately, and the second issue comes out in June. Also in the comic, there's pictures, like photographs of the dog. In the back, there's like a little photo album. Best thing that I bought during Free Comic Book Day. I wish the dog could sign, though. He needs to have like a little like ink pad, and he can put his paw print on all the books. For some reason, now I'm just picturing Peter Davidson from All Creatures Great and Small with like an eye patch.
going around the world, like, all creatures great and fierce.
Yes, 100 times yes, please. Also, all comic book stores should have dogs. They should just have a store dog. I will be your number one customer and probably buy like twice as much stuff as I should. So please, everybody get on that right away. That was definitely the best part of Free Comic Book Day. And that, I guess that wasn't really free. So,
and that was more you, like you said, supporting the stores that you went to. You supported a signing there, so.
And bought the issue, got it signed and everything. And so I think that's a part of the Free Comic Book Day experience. So, but back to kind of that question, who is Free Comic Book Day for? Do you think it brings in new fans? Is it for kids? Is it for hardcore fans? Who?
I think that it's supposed to be a day that lures you to the store. And so it's supposed to be, now I think that's once again why they make it such a big day and, gussy it up. So maybe people who, oh, I just watched a comic book movie. I just loved that Avengers movie, like your mom just recently did.
Oh my god, she just sent me an email about how she found Iron Man 2 finally on demand, and she was just so ecstatic because she has all these comic book movies to watch. Sorry, random aside.
So, but someone like that, or maybe somebody who used to collect comics a lot, like my dad, maybe like, oh, well, maybe I'll see, what the new Batman's is all about. And then once again, new people who were like, oh, I've heard about comics. Oh, they're free comics. Let me check some things out. So I think that's the intended purpose. To just get people who have not been in a comic book store, have not been in a comic book store in a while, back in there and, see what is to offer.
I would say, I think the intended purpose, and that's good. No, I think you're totally on track there, Al. I would say I think the intended purpose, especially because there's so many all ages comics, is for older people to bring their kids, their niece, their nephew, whoever it is. Like, I feel like it's for people to bring other people into comics. Like, I feel as though nobody really goes to Free Comic Book Day
randomly.
Yes, I feel as though if you've never read comics, are you really gonna go to Free Comic Book Day by yourself? I would think that somebody who already reads comics would take you, or you'd be interested, and then somebody who reads comics would take you. I feel like I can't imagine a group of people going together to go get free comics on Free Comic Book Day that have never read comics. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, although I wonder, maybe it's just a matter of alignment. Why they don't throw in at the beginning of, say, like the new Marvel movie, and like at the at the beginning of Winter Soldier. Hey, remember, Free Comic Book Day is May 6th. They made such a big deal about Guardians of the Galaxy. Just at the beginning, a quick little...
Or put it in the trailer.
Yeah. Just, a trailer, Are you interested in Guardians of the Galaxy? Then you should go down May 6th to Free Comic Book Day and, learn more about their adventures. This Marvel Studio, so isn't probably too much of trouble to get them to get, something at the beginning of the movie about that. I was going to say, I think that's the intended purpose. I think that you're right. In actuality, it's mostly people who already know about comics going, or people who already know about comics basically not dragging, but through gravity bringing other people who would not normally go there. Like, maybe they're kids who don't normally read comics, but, well, if my parent, guardian, friend, romantic paramour go to the comic book store and they're free comics, yeah, sure, I'll go along and pick something up as well.
Exactly. That's what I think. But I guess now the question is, how does it actually work? What do you think? Do you think that's actually what happens?
Just by, the little snippets of conversation that I saw, it did, at least in Manhattan, seem like, I guess, 80% people would normally be at that comic book store. I mean, once again, I did not carefully listen in on every conversation on the line, nor did I express it, just the normal amount of. They were usually a pretty decent sized line to get into the comics, so I usually people watch in between our little conversations. But I was not paying the strictest attention. But yeah, it did mostly feel like people who would already be in the store just getting free comics on Free Comic Book Day.
And also, I really would be curious, because I've never done Free Comic Book Day outside of New York City, so I don't know at all, what the makeup of who shows up for Free Comic Book Day is at all. But I agree with you, Al. I think also one of the things is that, kind of, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but some of these stores open really early, and I feel like, who is that for? I don't feel like casual people are going to show up to stand in line for free comics at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. And so, again, I mean, most of these stores, this is their normal hours. It's not like they're opening early or anything. Like, that's when they open. And, like, JHU and Forbidden Planet, I think they both open at 9 normally. So it's not, I don't feel like they're opening early. So I guess I'm not really criticizing them for that, but I just feel like nobody's showing up that early and is casual about it, And I think maybe that's a deterrent here in the city. Again, like when Ed Sizemore, who asked a lot of good questions for this podcast, I think the stores that he was mentioning open at like noon or something, and that's like a much more reasonable. I can imagine more people.
I stroll out of bed. I had lunch. Let's go and see. Oh, I hear it's Free Comic Book Day. Let's go. We're going to be out Saturday anyhow, so why don't we stop by, Frank's comic book shop and see what is being offered.
And I totally agree. And also, because they open early, they run out of, like, my ultimate point was that things are gone. There's not very much left by noon on Saturday. Like, 95% of the free comics are already gone. So, again, it's something that you have to really go out of your way for here in New York City, where there's tons of comic book fans. There's, there's more than enough to go around. So,
and I remember that when they had the Walking Dead comic last year, and I picked it up for my dad, I remember that went like really quickly, and that seems, of all the titles, the one that like maybe not the casual people would just come in, considering how popular, especially I feel like a little bit of the fandom of that show has died off, but like last year it was still pretty high. So I feel like I know that title, I will pick that up. Like, I feel that other than, once again, the major Marvel movie titles and maybe the DC one, I feel like that's the title people would be like, oh yes, give me one of that. Even if they weren't into comics. But yeah, at least once again in Manhattan, if you like came in at 1 or 2, you ain't gonna get no Walking Dead comic. Also, I feel like, interestingly enough, the comics that I usually see stick around the most are the kid comics.
Well, that's at least good then, because that means either they're ordering more of those, or that means more people who come in later are able to get that stuff. So, I don't know, maybe it all evens out. Not sure.
Yeah, but I'm curious people who participated outside of New York. Even if you were in, say, New Jersey, I feel that's different enough. I'm curious how that went for you guys. Like, how many people did you guys see that you think were not comic book aficionados? Like, I know Old Geek's considered, not Vinny, but his co-host Diego works at a comic book store. So I'm curious, how many people did he see, if he listens to this, went that were not regulars at his store? And also, what was, if you went later in the day, what had, if what had sold out and what stuck around?
You've randomly reminded me that none of the stores we go to ever use these spaces. So if you have ever gotten any free comic book day comics, or if you got any this year, I'm kind of curious. So on a free comic book day comic, there is a white box for the comic book store to put its information, because maybe you've the first time you've been to that store, so it's a place for them to advertise. But none of the stores we go to ever do it.
I thought Bulletproof in Brooklyn did it last year, if I remember correctly.
So I'm just curious if, I don't know why they don't do it, but I wonder if other people actually use the space that is given to them. There were 2 manga offerings this year.
And 1 fake manga.
2 fake manga.
Oh, right.
Which would be just called comics. That's just comics. To not make a differentiation. So somebody asked, like, oh, how is that compared to manga offerings in the past? And I just can't even remember. Like, I don't remember at all.
I swore there was something last year. But it was like a title. But I don't remember what it was. It's just totally...
Yeah, I was really surprised to see Drawn and Quarterly releasing this Showa free comic book day title. It's probably the most surprising thing that came out. And then Viz also released for free comic book day. So I definitely wish we saw more of manga during free comic book day, especially because, if nothing else, whether or not free comic book day works on casual fans or hardcore fans, whatever it is, it's a place to advertise new stuff that's coming out, the next, what you guys think is going to be the next big thing, what publishers want, or what publishers feel like, hey, people aren't reading enough of this. So it's a chance for you to sell me on, like, tons of different stuff. And as I said, I feel like the offerings have gotten better every year, just as far as, like, quality goes. So
I think, how much do you think it's a chance also for indies to kind of like, hey, you usually buy in your big tube, and maybe you should try me out. I'm interesting, and I don't cost you anything, Wink.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things I like personally about Free Comic Book Day. It is a chance for me to sample a lot of things, try stuff that I haven't read before. Why not? That's sort of the idea for us, is to get as much as possible and just read everything, because who knows, you might find something that you were just unaware of. And since it's free for us as fans and readers, it's free to us, why not? I don't even get why you wouldn't go out on Free Comic Book Day. But I think that, manga fans maybe skip it or don't really pay attention to it, but I think there's a lot of stuff that they would like, and since now they're all actually offering manga during that day, why, I think it's just another incentive. I also think it's kind of a chance for manga fans who maybe feel like they don't really care about American comics to fix themselves, put themselves on the right path,
check themselves before they wreck themselves,
so that they can see just kind of the breadth of what's being offered. Again, because I think that the all ages titles are just always the strongest, and there's just so much of them. I think you'll always walk away with at least one thing that you really enjoyed and thought was fun or funny. But I definitely would like to see more manga, and it doesn't seem like a difficult thing to do for the day, especially because, unlike a lot of stuff, a lot of publishers create stories just for Free Comic Book Day, which also, I think, encourages people to go out and get them. But some are just, reprintings of older things. And with manga, the stories already exist, so all you gotta do is, like, put that first chapter or whatever it is, out there, and voila!
Although I don't think any of the manga that we read with like a first chapter was all kind of middle material.
That's true. So you don't even have to be, doesn't even have to be that. Just put out something that you feel like is going to grab people's attention. And then I had a good question, which was, do you think it's possible to have too many free comic book day comics? I don't think they mean that as in like, it's not like I have too many free comics. Like, that's like saying, is there such a thing as too much cake? Because there
Or too much booty.
Yeah, there ain't neither of those things exist. Those are not true statements. So, I think it's more like from a
choice overload.
Yeah, or maybe like drowning out, what's being offered. I don't think so though. I think more free is more good with me.
Yeah, I mean, plus I feel like it's not like it's all there's 30 comics and 14 of them are DC and 14 of them are Marvel, and there's 2 indie titles. I mean,
yeah, no one dominates the free comic book day.
I mean, there's 1 or 2 titles from, there's that Street Fighter from Udon, and then there's this Les Mis one from Udon. And, there's pretty much 2 Guardians of the Galaxy ones. But other than that, I don't see a lot of overlap.
Yeah, most publishers do 1. And and a couple of the bigger ones do 2. That's pretty much status quo. So I don't see how you could have too many. Choices are good, and I guess it's too many in the fact that I can't get all the ones I want to read because there's too many. Like, we even using, a collective group of people going, you still don't necessarily get everything.
In the next section, we're going to talk about all the comics that we got in...
Maybe not all of them.
Well, we'll try to touch on the major highlights and lowlights and maybe some things that stood out. Before we do that, let us take a break. And our food for thought is, if you had all the manga licenses and you could put out 1 manga as a free comic book day title, which title would you pick?
One day I did not live until today. How can I live when we are parted? One day more. Tomorrow you'll be worlds away. And yet with you my world has started.
One more day I'm on my own.
Will we ever meet again?
One more day with him not caring.
I was born to be with you.
What a life I might have known.
And I swear I will be true.
But he never saw me then.
We are back, and our food for thought was, if you could put out a manga title for Free Comic Book Day, what would it be? I'm assuming we're picking things that are released in English because...
I thought you could be fantastical.
Oh my god. I wasn't trying to think that big, personally.
If you stuck 2 titles that have been licensed in English, I have no objection to that. It's probably the smarter choice for this theoretical thing that you can't do.
Yeah. Well, if we're going to be realistic about it, I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't do maybe a little Attack on Titan for Free Comic Book Day. I'd like to see Kodansha participate, but it just seems as though it's really big right now. It could have a lot of crossover appeal. And because they're trying to pimp those big, like, Titan editions of the books, could even have, like, a color spread in it or something to entice the children's into the comic book store. I think that we probably would have seen a lot more anime fans, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Like, I think if that had happened, I would have seen them in the city more for Free Comic Book Day.
Actually, all that reminds me of is that time that Kino had that Attack on Titan Day, and we didn't go see it because we went to Veronica Mars movie, that free screening we went to. So I feel like we made the correct decision, but I just remember us missing out on that.
I wonder what Attack on Titan... What does that even mean?
I think they were, once again, I think they were pimping, like...
Oh, the junior high school series or whatever that is. Oh man, that was so... But they could have done like a whole, like a little anthology or something.
Mm-hmm. That Levy side story manga as well.
Hotcakes, man, flying off the shelves. But I feel like people would have picked it up, even who weren't fans of it already, I think, because it's starting to get around. Like, people are hearing about, they've heard the name now, it's coming up more, and I just feel like it could have been...
It's on Netflix, so it's going to be on Cartoon Network, so yeah, no, it seems like this is the time to strike with it. My title is actually also Kodansha that I came up with, and my choice would have been Vinland Saga. I think in retrospect, because I picked mine before you told me yours, I feel like it's very Western feeling, and it has a lot of action, but it does kind of, to a degree, appeal to that, oh, I'm a collector of comics type of person.
And the art is much better than Attack on Titan.
Oh yeah, and that's all. And it's a very good art. It's the guy who did, Planetus and all that. So it's, very good art. So I feel like that's a very good storm of, something that would appeal to people who read comics, but totally, don't totally, a Sakura comic, I will not dirty my hands with that.
Could have been a good time to do, like, a little Sailor Moon, too.
Mm.
I mean, we got the anime coming out. It was already a bestseller, so...
But Kate, Sailor Moon isn't really that different from Cardcaptor Sakura, as I had my long internet argument with someone recently.
It's only different in the fact that people who just watched cartoons were obsessed with it, and people have nostalgia for it, and it created an entire legion of fans.
And unlike most things other than like Dragon Ball Z, it gets parodied and stuff like Robot Chicken because it is that much of the pop culture lexicon. But yeah, not that important. Not that different from Cardcaptor Sakura. And I am hardly some kind of rabid Cardcaptor Sakura hater. Tomoyo for life!
Yeah, hell yeah! But yeah, maybe it could have been... I don't know, yeah, we're like stuck on Kodansha for this free comic book day or free comic book day offering, so Kodansha, get on that. I can't really think of... Nothing really springs to mind for me from...
I feel like Death Note is just a little too in the bygone. Was it Viz recently picked up? Who picked up Master Keaton?
Had to be.
Yeah. I feel like... I wonder if the art's a little too old, and maybe it's a little too in production schedule, but I feel like that's a Viz. Master Keaton does seem like a title that might have a older comic book reader and like, oh, this doesn't look like your average manga. What's this about? Oh, well, that's certainly different.
All right, well, I think this is a perfect time then to talk about the manga offerings from that were actually out on Free Comic Book Day. So, Drawn and Quarterly released Shigeru Mizuki's Showa, A History of Japan, and as I mentioned before, this was a really surprising release, and just something not very expected, I would say, for this kind of an event.
I'm wondering, once again, how much it's going for comic book store people who would pick up something like Tezuka or Tezuka, because that seems to be the main title that they go, collectors of comics who, would also possibly pick up a European comic and such.
But also, I think manga fans, as I think it was the stronger offering,
Mm-hmm.
and also, I think that as much as people want to either pretend that they're not interested in Japan as, like, you know, you don't want to like Japan just because of anime and manga, but at the same time, you got to admit that you're kind of curious about its history, and, you know, and that's not a bad thing. So I think it's kind of, it works for that. Like, it's talking about, you know, this era of the war, and again, I think you're getting a perspective that we don't normally get, especially as Americans, as, you know, somehow we've dominated the conversation about World War II for some reason. I don't know. So I think you get like a little bit of history, you get a little bit of a different perspective, but it's also doesn't come off as really heavy. You know, I think it has like a little bit it has a little humor to it. So
I kind of wonder if its older art style would turn off your typical Naruto Bleach kind of.
Al, you haven't met them lately.
Oh, I forgot that they love old 70s style character designs. My bad.
Love. You're right. The audience for it is certainly older people. I don't think they were trying to pretend otherwise. But, yeah, you're right. I'm just trying to convince them that they should go read it. Like any of those people listen to this podcast, please.
Our 20 listeners, all in their, like, 30s.
Now we move on to Viz's offering, which is Terraformers. They also paired that with All You Need Is Kill, which is a original comic that they're doing an adaptation of, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you know why they picked All You Need Is Kill, right?
Nope.
Because there's a movie with, like, Tom Cruise coming out soon.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean...
Based on the novel.
Yes. So, I mean, I think they're hoping that people would pick this up being like, oh, that movie coming out soon is based on this. Oh, let me, what do you call it? Pick that up. So that's definitely why that's the front cover one.
But the actual manga offering is Terraformers. Which is a science fiction series, which I've heard the name a lot, but I had never really read or knew anything about. I just knew it was science fiction.
The only one I had actually heard about was All You Needed Was Killed, because, you know, the movie has a significant amount of buzz. People keep mentioning, oh, it's based on a Japanese novel. And so that much I knew. And probably also to sell a bit of their science fiction novels, Viz's science fiction novel thing. But yeah, Terraformers, I think I vaguely only remember that it existed from the lineup when you mentioned it.
I also didn't know that it was licensed, because there's all these spin-offs of Terraformers coming out, so that's, I think, why it's been in my mind, and it's been in the anime news cycle lately, but I didn't even remember that it was licensed, so I was kind of as surprised as anybody else when I found it here, and I really questioned the licensing of this manga.
Felt like it was kind of like by the guy who did Gantz, but it is totally not.
Yeah, so the chapter, or the little snippet, really, it's not even a whole chapter, and it doesn't seem to start, at the beginning, is these two groups of people who are exploring this alien planet, and they run into some aliens.
And they are super racially sensitive aliens.
Yeah, they're supposed to be cockroach aliens that have gained humanoid forms, which I have no idea how this happened or what the heck. I mean, you don't get a lot of information at all. It's like, it's really only a few pages. You see these aliens, and they look like racist caricatures that you've seen of black people. I was like, are you serious right now? I was really taken aback. I just wondered, did anybody at Viz look at this and think, this might not be a good idea? And maybe somebody did, and everyone was like, it'll be fine. It will not be fine. I was pretty shocked. I mean, was it just me?
Oh, no, definitely. I did get the same impression. I guess I wonder if it didn't seem that interesting. So I wonder.
I mean, yeah, it does. I mean, I wasn't like, oh man, this manga would be good if not for that. It was kind of like, yeah, I guess, but
I wonder if we just haven't heard about a lot about it because it is just so meh. But you mentioned that like they get all this spin-off stuff, so it's not like it's, some super obscure, we only printed up 200 of these, back catalog, yeah.
yeah, so I've heard the name. I was deeply disturbed by what I saw.
But then again, I also feel like Viz is really good at not telling you what's coming out, and basically a lot of their titles just succeed because they have like Naruto can't fail and people will know about it because it's Naruto. Whereas I feel like every once in a while some of their other titles it's like, oh yeah, that is coming out.
I don't think you guys need to pick this one up though. You can safely skip.
Terraformers.
I don't know. I think it was a really bad call. Let's move on. I don't want to talk about that anymore. So we mentioned... Well, why don't we talk about All You Need Is Kill, since, it's the...
And once again, I feel like it's the title they're pushing a little more.
Wasn't crazy about the art. It really feels amateur. Just not very refined. It doesn't do a lot. And especially if this is supposed to be something very high profile, I really don't think that... I don't think it's the best foot forward, but I don't know anything about the source material, so.
I just remember it was a pretty decently acclaimed book, and once again, it's getting a big movie. It's just one of those things that I'm actually kind of just been waiting to see what the reaction to the movie would be, and then kind of see how much I wanted to go and look into further things, but just never have. I did find it interesting that they did focus a lot on the main female protagonist. I mean, the main male protagonist does not appear, but it mostly seems like, hey, I'm the main male protagonist, so let me tell you the backstory of the woman in this series. I feel like they really wanted to tell her story, but I feel like shouldn't you have been pressing up more that it's kind of this looping Groundhog's Day kind of story? I mean, they touch upon it, but it is so almost said under his breath type of thing. Whereas I feel maybe you should have played up that part of it, since I think that's its real selling point. I mean, I don't think her backstory was a little bit interesting, but I feel like they really should have played up that gimmick of it more, but I don't know.
Then we had a couple of other, faux, not really manga from Udon, and they released a Street Fighter anthology, which... It's a Street Fighter anthology, okay, guys? I'm not even gonna bother reviewing this. You know that it was, mildly not good. Some of the art was pretty good. Some of the fights looked cool. But as far as the writing and the story goes, come on. I don't really...
What, Kate? It was a Shakespearean tale. It was the bestest... No, okay.
In a way, I feel like Street Fighter comics are just... You're really buying them for art and fights. I mean, are you really buying them for that really well thought out character arc? Not really. So, it's almost a shame that Udon can't just release this as an art book for Korean Comic Book Day. Wait, there has to be words and a storyline in here.
And they have licensed Street Fighter art books, so
I think that would be better use. But as far as visually, it was pretty nice, and it was one of the few oversized comics of the of Free Comic Book Day, which was cool. The other thing that Udon's doing are these, which other people have done also in the past, are these manga... Oh, sorry, you guys can't see my quotation marks here. Manga classics, which is them taking classic literature and then doing a manga, quote-unquote, version of it.
I always see them at the Central Branch Library in Manhattan. They always have a bunch of manga, adaptations of famous... I don't think they're by Udon, they're by another one of those companies that does them, but they have a bunch of those there.
So Udon is is doing a few, and the one that they made a big deal of was Les Mis, which was really smart. Obviously the movie came out recently and people were really into it. But the cover, I love the cover actually, because it reminds me that there's that
Cosette anime.
Yeah, that Masterpiece Theater, and it focuses on Cosette. Cosette's part of the story. So this one is just, but the actual inside is really telling you kind of the real tragic story of Fantine. If you've seen the movie, you will know that it is not a pleasant story. But the artwork makes it feel a little
stiff.
Yeah, it's not terrible at all, but it doesn't have enough gravity to it, I guess. And it feels a little too simple. And the adaptation is, adapting stuff like this is so difficult because this is it's something ridiculous. I always say 1800, but I don't even remember how many it is. But it's an 1800 page book, and it's a lot of work. So, I think all of the versions of these manga classics of stuff are always... I don't think I've ever seen one that's, great. They're either, good, and they do, maybe they get people interested. I mean, again, that's really their goal, is to get kids interested in classic literature and classic stories. So if that's what they do, I think that's fine. I thought that the Pride and Prejudice one... the artwork was at least felt a little bit more of its time, but the writing in that one was much more stiff than in Les Mis. So I don't know. It was just okay. Both of them were just very in the middle.
I don't know. I always just feel that the panel flow is just off by something. It's not like they don't understand how to do manga paneling. It's just they're one beat off, and I can't put my finger on why that is, but I definitely sense that they're just a little bit off. And once again, the poses occasionally do seem oddly static, and they're not copy paste. It's just something stiff, some piece of stiffness that once again, if I was a little more of a art person, I think I'd be able to put my finger on it a little better.
There's one more that is totally relevant to I feel anime fans, which is this Transformers vs. G.I. Joe comic from IDW, and I don't know if I loved this comic or it was horrible, or if it was both of those things at the same time.
I think because we were debating, we had as we always do, a little discussion about what we were going to talk about, and I think that we came to abreast that Transformers vs. G.I. Joe is just something that you should read.
Yes, absolutely read this.
I can't say that you will enjoy it, but it will definitely indelibly leave a mark on you.
I mean, yeah, it's just... It feels like it's tongue-in-cheek, I think.
I think it's supposed to look like old, late 80s, early...
Well, that I totally agree with. I mean, if there's one thing that's fantastic about this comic, it is the art. It is fabulous.
And it captures that kind of retro 80s... I remember owning G.I. Joe and Transformers comics that looked exactly like this.
Yeah, I really feel like it really captured the feel, which is right. But then I just kept wondering while I was reading it, okay, it can't possibly, is it trying to be bad, but in a totally good way? I think that is the goal. I mean, and then there's these hilarious, moments where it's definitely aware of itself. There's this part where it just has a little tag under roadblock, and it says world's deadliest chef. I don't know why it says that. And then, Major Blood, it says terrorist, poet. So,
I didn't even know it.
So I feel like there's this. The comic seems aware of itself, but I don't know. It's hard to describe. But I think that you should totally read it, and it made me kind of want to read the next, because there's going to be more in July. Although the one thing I will say about it is that it's much more about G.I. Joe than it's about Transformers, which I thought was weird. Like, I kept expecting them to show up more or be more relevant, but they're kind of really to the side in this special Free Comic Book Day issue. Totally read that, I think. Now that we've had this discussion, I think that, yeah. And a lot of the Free Comic Book stuff goes up online so that people can read it, so find this comic.
Is that the only one who was, like, really weirded out that Duke was the new guy in that one? When I always think of, like, Duke being the old leader of G.I. Joe, but in this one he's like, hey guys, I'm the new recruit, Duke!
Also, this comic is mostly people trying to get in Scarlett's pants. Like, I mean, like, not physically, but everybody's just hitting on her the whole time. And it's just
and she's like,
comic.
And she's like, I'm married to G.I. Joe.
It's just... It was really special, you guys. I think it was really special. As far as everything else that we got, we're not going to review everything one by one like we just did. I think we, wanted to pull out the things that the
most
manga,
relevant to the podcast.
Yeah. And then everything else we're just going to, I think we'll just
hit highlights and lowlights.
Yes, because we don't want to be here for another 4 hours while we review all 20 other comics that we got. For time's sake, we can quickly go through the Marvel and DC, sort of the superhero offerings, if you will. Not a lot of other superhero, obviously there are other companies that do superheroes, but not a lot of the stuff we picked up were really superhero-y. So it kind of just ends up being Marvel and DC. Al, you mentioned it before, but Marvel really focused on Guardians of the Galaxy. And at first, I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh man, because the same weekend as Free Comic Book Day was the release of Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I was and obviously Captain America has come out recently. So, and we have X-Men Days of Future Past coming out soon as well. So I was kind of surprised, they weren't doing something connected to any of those things. But then I realized that everybody knows who the X-Men are now from movies. Everybody knows who Spider-Man is now from movies. Everybody knows who the Avengers are now. So it actually seemed really smart for them to focus on Guardians of the Galaxy, which is this new kind of part of the franchise for them that they're trying to promote in the movie universe and get people up to speed. So I actually thought that was really smart.
How many comic book people do you know who are like, who the fudge are Guardians of the Galaxy? Or
a lot of it's like, oh yeah, I've heard of them, or I've seen them in this one thing, but I don't really care, or I don't really know a lot about them. Yeah, it's pretty common, even among comic book readers. You're right. So I thought that was smart. So they had kind of a more general offering, I feel like a little bit of an older offering, which was Guardians of the Galaxy, and then the younger, more kid-friendly offering was Rocket Raccoon. Both comics, I didn't understand. The one thing I didn't understand, so I did say I got that they were focusing on Guardians of the Galaxy, but both of these comics have other stories in them, including Spider-Man. Each one has its own Spider-Man story, and it's like, why is that not on the cover? Why isn't there just a little plus Spider-Man story? Because then don't you think people would even be more likely to pick them up to learn about Guardians of the Galaxy? But then, there's a Spider-Man story.
Spider-Man, nobody likes that guy.
Everybody likes that guy. Everyone. And of course, shocker here, the Spider-Man stories were my favorites in these. I actually really liked the Ultimate Spider-Man one and Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon version, which apparently a lot of people don't like that cartoon, but every time I've seen it, I really liked it. And so I thought that that was the strongest to me. I thought the Rocket Raccoon story was okay, but I thought it felt kind of cutesy, but then, as you pointed out, Al, I was foolish for saying that.
But I feel like, that's supposed to be the one for kids, and is, maybe the parent comes for the adult Guardian of the Galaxy and they're like, here, son or daughter, if mommy or daddy is getting the adult one, here is the Rocket Raccoon for you.
You know what's throwing me off, I think, on that is this cover, which makes Rocket Raccoon look so menacing. I mean, it's not that he isn't or can't be, but the actual comic is kind of cute and fun, and the cover is like,
do you think
deadly evil raccoon?
Do you think that it's the application as the term I learned from Atlanta game developer podcast, Angry Eyes?
Oh, I see. You're probably right.
Because, once again, parents or adults always go, angry-eyed character on this. Kids won't like this. This character looks angry, and he has attitude. And kids are always like, he's got angry eyes. He's got attitude.
He's cool.
And I remember that, what do you call it? The guy, Brad, from the Atlanta Game Developers podcast, he's like, that doesn't work. Kids wouldn't be fooled. Oh my God. Every report I've ever read says kids always fall for that. My faith in humanity and children is broken. So I wonder how much it's like, put some angry-eyed Rocket Raccoon on that cover and kids will eat it up.
I know you're spot on, Al, now that you've explained it. That totally makes sense. So I thought that was the stronger off in general. The all-ages Marvel comic. The Guardians of the Galaxy one was pretty good too. I mean, it's mostly Tony Stark basically explaining who the Guardians of the Galaxy are, and they're like,
you like Tony Stark?
No, I don't.
Well, I meant the average audience does.
Oh, I was like, no. How dare you?
I merely tolerate him because of the Iron Man movies.
So I thought that was good. And then the Spider-Man story is totally weird because it's this like Shakespearean play Spider-Man thing.
But it leads into that big new Spider-Man like mega crossover that's supposed to have like all the iterations of Spider-Man, including Tokusatsu Japanese Spider-Man, where he's the stunt driver who has the alien suit Spider-Man and has Leopardo, the Spider-Man giant robot.
That's right. Every Spider-Man ever. Spider-Verse. Doesn't come out till November, though.
Although Pats did, I can't remember if they confirmed this or not, but Pats wanted to know if they had Italian Spider-Man.
Well, somebody will know the answer to that, I am sure.
I know that my roommate really liked the Thanos story in the main Guardians of the Galaxy one. And he was like, yeah, I never heard of Thanos before. And I just kind of thought he was like a dark side bruiser character, but he seems to have a little more on the ball. I like the Shakespearean Spider-Man story, if nothing else.
It was weird. It was, again, I kind of like the weird go out there and do something a little different idea, but again, that's probably because I'm used to reading all these comics all the time. As far as DCs go, so I feel like Marvel, both their adult and all ages offerings were pretty like equal. They were both pretty good.
Solid, but nothing you'd be like ranting about. Like, you gotta read this.
DC, on the other hand, has like the widest split because Teen Titans Go was really good. It was one of my favorite comics from Free Comic Book Day. It was a full comic, like it wasn't really, there were two big long stories for Teen Titans Go, and it was fun, it was hilarious, the art was great.
And it's a good tie-in for kids because the Teen Titans Go is currently playing on Cartoon Network, so it would be very easy for a kid who watched that on TV to be like, oh, yeah, give me that one. I've seen that on the TV. And
even if it wasn't, it's a comic and, like, it's a current comic and it's perfect for kids and I think that they would really like it. So I thought it was great. It was just really funny and I really liked the fridge story where they have to fight the fridge monster and, like, Raven had like, cursed the pizza box and it was silly and crazy and I think it had the right amount of humor and action for everybody. And then there was this, which pulled you in by having Batman Beyond on the cover.
And man, it was like some kind of weird mix of Terminator and like a zombie story, because it's about Brother Eye, and everybody takes over the universe with these like Borg-like half robot, half superheroes, and just that scene that I don't even know if it was like sexist or just really weird, where like they eventually capture. But yeah, it was just like, I don't even know what to say about that one scene where like Frankenstein's monster attacks Old Man the Flash, who's like one of the last not transformed heroes, and he's just got like Black Canary's head sewn into his chest, and you're like, is this sexist? Is just this disgusting? Is this
I don't know. Yeah, it's, and then this like superheroes are showing up, and they have these weird like insect metal bodies, and then torsos of like Wonder Woman's torso and like Superman's torso.
But I feel like it was like a zombie story, because it was like all these like, I'm zombie Borg Superman, and I'm taking out all the remaining
I don't know. I didn't find
heroes.
anything good about that story. I thought it was pretty terrible.
And then yeah, it's basically about Batman dying so he can send Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond, to try to stop it, but it goes wrong, Marty.
I don't know. I thought it was awful.
Yeah, I mean, if you already just like not anything that makes me go, man, I really wonder what happens in that. I'm more like, yeah, I can continue to avoid the New 52.
Yeah, I felt like there was nothing appealing about that book, and not that DC doesn't have any appealing books right now, because I think that they do, but nothing about that would make me want to read anymore. So, Teen Titans Go, thumbs way, way up. This
Future's End.
No. Of everything else,
I think we can all mention the Mouse Guard hardcover.
Woo!
That was really, I mean, I know most of the stores didn't have many copies of it, but man, that is a pretty book. And it's a Mouse Guard, so it's, very, almost gonna say, has this elemental like fable appeal. Like, it feels like an old story, even though it's, it feels like this classic story that's just been passed down for generations.
And I loved the Mouse Guard story was another Black Axe story, because the third volume of Mouse Guard was all about the Black Axe, and so this just ties into it really well. And it's also about three sisters, so it was a really cool story, I thought. And of course the hardcover is nice. Also in here is this Labyrinth story, which I was surprised to see, and like I really liked, I liked the artwork a lot. I would totally read a whole like graphic novel version of Labyrinth done in this art style. I wish that was a thing.
Oh, just to mention that it existed, there was a Farscape comic in the back, and I know that Farscape fans are pretty, they're not the most common science fiction fans, but they're not a small segment, and they're usually pretty, hardcore about their love of Farscape.
The thing was about that Farscape comic, though, was that I had no idea what was going on.
Oh yeah. It did not seem to hold out its hand for new readers or people who had not seen the original TV show.
Yeah, so I don't have an opinion. I was like, I have no idea what's going on. So.
I just wanted to mention it because I know that the Farscape fans are pretty, vocal.
I definitely would be remiss not to mention that there was an Avatar: The Last Airbender special for Free Comic Book Day, and it was drawn by Faith Erin Hicks, who I think both me and Al are big fans of. We really love her.
And they mentioned fake comic book girls. I mean, not fake comic book girls, fake shell collecting girls.
That was so good. It's just a funny kind of story about Sokka and Yuki. And yeah, like, Sokka's like, I'm such a huge shell collector, because they find this cool store, but Sokka's never collected shells ever. But then the guy, so Sokka is a total noob and like a liar about being a shell collector, but the guy at the store is like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Oh, you stupid girl. Like, so yeah, there's this hilarious like fake geek girl commentary in it. And then they help out this girl who's being harassed by them. So it's like a PSA, but Avatar style.
I think we were all surprised by the Uncle Scrooge comic being so inventive. Is because, I mean, it's a standard DuckTales story of Magica the Spell trying to steal Uncle Scrooge's lucky dime, and Donald and Uncle Scrooge, getting involved. But she has this wand that changes their gravity, so they're walking on the walls or the ceilings, and it really plays with the paneling a lot due to that, which I thought was very visually interesting.
Yeah, this is a reprint of some of these older Donald Duck comics these are from the 90s, I think. But yeah, I never really read them then, so seeing Don Rosa's art, I was really impressed with that story, and it was a really cool just to see them, walking on the panels differently, and then other people, not everybody's gravity was changed, so it really changed up the dynamics of everything. And apparently they're going to be doing new stories, so that's why they kind of did this, to hype up the new series that's coming.
Yeah, but I thought it was worth mentioning what great paneling was done in that one. Just if nothing else, it's worth looking at it just for that.
I totally want to mention Steam Wars, because it's supposed to be this sort of riff on Star Wars. I mean, it even has the same title treatment, but it's steampunk, although it felt more space cowboy to me than steampunk, but there was a little steampunk in there too, of course.
I'll just mention, love him or hate him, the artwork was done by Fred Perry.
I think everything, actually. I think he...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, and the story
and art, yeah.
Just because he is kind of, one
infamous?
Yeah. For, being behind Ninja High School and more infamously Gold Diggers. I thought he did a fun job with it.
Yeah, I actually ended up liking the art quite a bit. It was funny, though, if they hadn't made it so, obviously this is based on, doing the Star Wars titling and such, I don't think I really would have guessed that it was Star Wars, except that the girl in the series has, a Princess Leia, hairstyle and stuff. But otherwise, I don't think I would be like, oh man, that was totally Star Wars. I don't know if that's good or bad, or maybe they were just felt like, oh, well, we should relate it to Star Wars because that'll help it sell. I don't know, because it didn't really feel like
I felt like a lot of the high points were the same, but they definitely didn't want it to just be, all right, now Luke just has a hat with gears on it.
Well, yeah, thank goodness.
And now, what do you call it? Han Solo fires his blaster, but it has a steam valve on it. The end.
No, he definitely went much further with that. I actually like that Han Solo is even more of a an actual cowboy, which is fun. But it was cute. It was a cute story. I guess it's going to be an ongoing.
Oh, and the CPO is basically a properly stodgy British gentleman explorer.
Those were the ones that stood out to me most as being the best.
Mm-hmm.
There were some other all ages comics that were good, but I feel like they weren't as strong as their last year ones. Atomic Robo, I thought last year's was stronger. Kaboom, who does the Adventure Time and stuff, I thought Adventure Time was really strong last year. Although regular show was pretty good this year.
Yeah, I agree with Atomic Robo. Once again, I just had to mention, why did they kill that monster? I felt like that it didn't seem like that it made no effort to show like that monster was done killing people left and right or destroying homes and villages. It just seemed like, hey, there's a monster here. Oh, we accidentally stole its eggs. Stupid monster trying to save your children. Ha! You died because of it. That's what you get for trying to save your babies.
That's so sad.
I was like, wait a minute. Atomic Robo, are you going to arrest these guys for being total dicks? Oh, you're calling them heroes? All right. I didn't realize you gave medals to douchebags, Atomic Robo.
I'm sure that's not what they meant, but
just the way that the story presented it, it seemed like, let's pat these jerks on the back. Did you want to talk about the worst of the worst?
Oh, Al, I think you got to talk about this one then.
All right, I picked up probably the worst one that I read, and we picked up some stuff that was meh or uninteresting, or that one Uber's one that was like so much text.
Yeah, I don't know why I went all like, I don't even know what to say, because I opened this up and I was like, there's too many words in this comic book, I'm not reading it.
It's also like, it's about like, what if Nazi Germany on like the last days of the war developed superheroes that, basically turned the tide of the war and made it go on and became the superhero arms race. And it's just so bloody and gory, and I was like, nope, do not want. Thank you very much. But that was still not the worst comic, because it had to be Impractical Jokers, which is based on some true TV, which is like the mythical origin of being these four friends from high school. And it's supposed to be like, oh man, these four guys are wacky and always challenging each other to, do all these hilarious things. And it's like, hey man, I dare you to steal his hat. I stole his hat. Oh no, he's angry at us. Wop wop!
Give me this! I didn't read this because you were like, don't read it, it's horrible, but now I'm like, I just have to look at it. But I feel as though if True TV is allowed to make a comic for Free Comic Book Day, everybody should be making Free Comic Book Day comics and selling them, okay? Like,
where's my Mythbusters comic?
Yeah,
True Detective.
I think, this also, for whatever reason, makes me think, I'm surprised that there isn't a Big Bang Theory, ongoing comic book.
Kate.
Because it's probably the level of funny as this is.
Kate, somewhere, the Big Bang Theory Free Comic Book Day thing is coalescing into existence just because you said that, and you will be the most hated person.
I will hate myself, okay? So nobody else will have to hate me. But I just, that's just a weird, that might be the weirdest thing you picked up.
I'll just have Shabazzo or whatever that guy is.
Whatever that guy says.
Whatever his stupid catchphrase is.
Well, that was something you read.
So we're going to watch now Impractical Jokers every week.
No!
Although I did pick up the 2000 AD comic, which once again always makes me wonder when people treat Judge Dredd I don't understand why people don't think Judge Dredd is super duper serious business. And I know that some, Judge Dredd is one of those series that is gone on for years, and Batman has different, if you read different eras of Batman, there's all very, very different levels of seriousness. But come on guys, you do realize that Judge Dredd has gone through eras where he is pretty much a joke. right? or that he is super campy. So let's not all pretend that, like some people do with Batman, that Judge Dredd is all serious business all the time, because that is not the case at all. You are only remembering the Judge Dredd that you want to remember.
That's probably true, and a lot of people do that with a lot of things, so... Yeah, I mean, I would say that the 2000 AD Free Comic Book Day stuff is always, like, jam-packed. Like, it's like, the most bang for your free buck. You know what I'm saying. Like, it has a ton of stories, it's really thick, like, it feels like a real book. And
it is probably one of the few chances you'll get at Free Comic Book Day to read anything European, so... That is just worth mentioning for that alone. 2 comics that I'd never heard of before, so I might as well mention them if for nothing else. They weren't my favoritist, but they were definitely new discoveries. Like a lot of the other stuff we've talked about are things like, who hasn't heard of, Donald Duck or, my gosh, Adventure Time. That is some obscure show that no one has ever cosplayed at an anime convention ever. But Rise of the Magi, I didn't know anything about, but if you put wizards in something, I'll at least give you a page or two. Definitely not what I expected from the cover.
Yeah, the cover's misleading.
Because I thought it was like super urban fantasy, because it's this guy in a hoodie, like spray painting this graffiti with dye witches. So I thought just from like, the Free Comic Book Day, covers thing, that, this is going to be some kind of urban fantasy. But it's very clearly set in like this fantasy world with like, magical guardians and flying carpets and, crystal castles, so... And not like a modern day fantasy world, so... So I'm like, maybe they're gonna like jump worlds, so maybe they'll eventually get to a world like that. Because there does seem to be some kind of like interdimensional invasion, so maybe the main character here will pop out. But yeah, it's about basically this carpet repair kid whose brother is this powerful magic knight, and he's like, his dad's like, your brother's the important magic knight, you should stick to what you know. And he's like, no,
stop being a dreamer. I mean, it definitely starts off as almost classically how an adventure story would start.
But yeah, it's pretty much just an introduction to, this invasion that he gets to witness, and seems to be like one of the few people who realizes it's coming. And then after that point, it's a bunch of, like concept art. Was an interesting hook. Although once again, yeah, most lying cover from what I could tell. And the other one I just thought was very kind of grim fairy tale was Courtney Crummin, which once again, the girl who's on the cover feels like, oh, you think she's the main character, but she's totally not.
And this is like a long running series, so I think it was trying to get new readers for something that's already kind of known. I mean, I'd never read it myself.
No, but again, why I brought it up in this little section at the end was it was once again a title I had never heard of, so I thought I would bring it up as kind of, it says for all ages, but it's definitely in that darker realm of all ages.
Yeah, because she's a witch, and it's got kind of a gothic feel, but it also seems like kind of has like a lesson,
But she's definitely a gray character, although, there is moral lessons. She is definitely, her and her mentor there, was it her father or grandfather, are definitely not, the nicest, most up and up characters. Plus, I feel like it didn't feel like totally squeaky clean, but it wasn't anything that you'd be like, oh, I can't give this to, my little ones. Oh, and once again, another thing worth pointing out, that had a female protagonist, which is something that I feel like a lot of the other ones did not. So that's worth, capable female protagonist. Always something that people ask for more of in comics. I think the most important question is, I'm guessing that most of our listeners are people who would go to a free comic book day. If you were one of our listeners, how would you get someone who would not normally come to free comic book day to come along? Because as you mentioned, that seems the most effective way. This seems to be the most effective part of free comic book day. Random people are probably not going to walk in that much, but it is a thing where you could get people who you know who have expressed interest in comics before, but basically don't want to plunk down a lot of money on stuff they don't know about. Well, how would you get them to come with you to a free comic book day?
I would bribe them with food. I mean, that's pretty much what I do, but I feel like I plan it, I make it the day, so I make all the plans, I set up, I send out an email, I tell everybody what there's going to be, I decide, we're going to have lunch here, and make it an event in a day, and do other things besides Free Comic Book Day.
Because I know Ed Sizemore, when they do it in his city, they all have a van, and they basically take the shuttle van to, 4 different stores. And then, after they've gone to all the stores, they get food, like you suggested. And then they go see whatever the big comic book movie, I think they went to see Spider-Man, obviously. And then, they go and end it with a day at the theater, and then everybody goes home. But basically, free comics, food, movie, so it's a big event day.
I feel like you can just plan your own, everybody's doing events at the stores, but you can make your own event. I think that's what works best. So, and then, ours is usually get up early, go get free comics, have lunch, then come back and read all the comics together. Talk about them, share them, and make it a group activity.
I had, tiramisu mochi, so that made the day special, if nothing else.
There's a lot of good food eaten that day. Empire Biscuit. That place is awesome. If you're in New York City, you gotta go. And they're open 24 hours.
Oh, and we found that place, Bad Burger.
Oh, we're going there next. Bad Burger. I need to go there. They serve brunch all the time. I would do a podcast about food because that's
what do you call it?
One of the best parts about Free Comic Book Day also.
I was about to say, Kate, we could finally get Dave and Joel style food questions if we just did where to eat in Manhattan.
Or if we did a segment of every podcast what did you eat lately? Then I could totally do that. All right, well, we're going to end it on food, and if you haven't had enough of us, you can visit the blog where we recently talked about the 2 new spin-off series of Kindaichi Case Files,
which are free to read on Manga Box, so that's definitely, I think, showing how the new ways that manga is going and being distributed digitally.
You're out of YouTube jail.
Oh yeah, I'm finally out of YouTube jail, so I can I put back on stuff, and I should be starting up by the time everybody listens to this, my chapter a day again. And hopefully I won't. I think I figured out what I did wrong, so if I ever get thrown in YouTube jail again, it'll be less time in the clink.
All right, so see you guys next month.
Bye bye.